In the quiet hours of the night, when the world outside slows and the mind begins to loosen its grip on the day, there is one process within you that continues with unwavering steadiness. Breathing moves on, moment after moment, without asking for attention, without needing instruction. It is the most familiar action of the body, and yet it is also one of the most quietly remarkable. This guide begins by settling gently into that idea, not to analyze it sharply or to turn it into effort, but simply to understand it in a calm, unhurried way. Breathing begins early in life and continues uninterrupted, often unnoticed, through sleep, thought, rest, and movement. It adapts automatically to every situation, from stillness to activity, from waking to dreaming. The lungs do not demand conscious control. Instead, they respond to subtle signals, adjusting rhythm and depth with a patience that mirrors the slow turning of the night sky. This reliability is not accidental. It is the result of simple structures working together in quiet coordination. As you listen, there is no need to change your own breathing. There is nothing to fix, nothing to improve, nothing to practice. The body already knows how to do this. The purpose here is only to describe what is already happening, to gently illuminate the pathway air follows, and to explain how movement and exchange occur without strain. Understanding can coexist with rest, and knowledge can drift softly alongside sleep. The lungs themselves are not muscles. They do not pull air inward by force, nor do they push it outward with effort. Instead, they respond to changes in space and pressure within the chest. This is an important idea that will return many times throughout this guide. Breathing is less about pulling air in and more about creating room for it to arrive. When the chest expands, air flows inward naturally, guided by physical laws that require no conscious participation. Within the chest, the lungs rest like soft, elastic sponges, protected by the rib cage and separated from the heart by delicate membranes. They are light in weight, flexible in shape, and deeply folded inside, creating an enormous surface area hidden within a relatively small space. Even now, as the body rests, millions of tiny air sacs are quietly exchanging gases, sustaining every cell without interruption. The breath is also deeply tied to rhythm. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause again. This gentle cycle repeats itself with subtle variation, sometimes slower, sometimes slightly deeper, but always balanced. During sleep, breathing naturally becomes more regular and often slower, guided by centers deep within the brain that monitor the chemistry of the blood and adjust ventilation accordingly. This means that even in complete unconsciousness, the body maintains balance with precision and care. As the night progresses, breathing becomes an anchor for rest. It does not need to be controlled to be calming. Simply knowing that it continues on its own can bring a sense of reassurance. The lungs are supported by a network of structures that exist solely to keep this exchange smooth and efficient, from the shape of the airways to the thinness of the membranes where gases pass. Every detail serves the same quiet purpose. Air enters the body carrying oxygen, a molecule essential for energy production within cells. At the same time, carbon dioxide, a waste product of metabolism, must be removed. Breathing is the bridge between these two needs. With each cycle, oxygen is welcomed in and carbon dioxide is gently released. This exchange happens continuously, even in the deepest stages of sleep, without disturbance. Throughout this guide, the language will remain simple and the pacing unhurried. The aim is not to overwhelm the mind with complexity, but to allow understanding to unfold gradually. Concepts will be revisited gently, from different angles, so they can settle naturally. Repetition is not a flaw here, but a feature, mirroring the steady repetition of the breath itself. It is also worth remembering that breathing is influenced by posture, gravity, and the soft architecture of the chest. When lying down, the lungs redistribute airflow and blood flow slightly, adapting to the horizontal position. This is normal and expected. The body adjusts quietly, maintaining efficient exchange, even as muscles relax and consciousness drifts. The nervous system plays a central role in this process, but it does so discreetly. Signals travel between the lungs, blood vessels, and brainstem, fine-tuning the rate of breathing in response to chemical changes rather than conscious thought. This allows the mind to rest while the body continues its work uninterrupted. There is a deep comfort in knowing that such vital tasks do not depend on attention. As this nighttime guide continues, you will hear about structures, movements, and mechanisms, all described in a way that remains calm and grounded. There will be no urgency, no alarms, no sudden shifts in tone. Each idea will connect smoothly to the next, forming a continuous narrative, much like the airflow through the respiratory system itself. For now, it is enough to recognize that breathing is already happening with remarkable consistency. The lungs rise and fall, pressure shifts gently, and air moves in response. This is not an achievement that must be earned. It is a baseline state, maintained effortlessly by the body's design. In the hours ahead, this guide will move slowly from broad orientation into finer detail, always returning to the same central truth. Breathing is a cooperative process, shaped by structure, guided by physics, and regulated by quiet biological feedback. Nothing about it is rushed. Nothing about it demands strain. As the introduction draws to a close, the focus remains soft. The breath continues, steady and unremarkable in the best possible way. The lungs rest within the chest, doing their work silently. The night holds space for rest, and understanding drifts gently alongside it. The journey into the mechanics of breathing has begun, and it will continue at the same calm pace, one steady inhale and exhale at a time. 2. The map of the respiratory system. With the gentle introduction now settled, attention can drift naturally toward orientation, before exploring motion, exchange, or rhythm. It is useful to form a quiet mental map of the respiratory system as a whole, not as a diagram filled with labels, but as a slow, descriptive journey through space, beginning where air first meets the body and ending deep within the lungs where exchange takes place. This map is not meant to be memorized. It is meant to feel familiar. Air most often enters through the nose, passing into the nasal cavity. This space is more than a simple opening. Its curved passages, lined with moist tissue and tiny hairs, gently warm, humidify, and filter the air. Dust particles and microorganisms are trapped here, prevented from traveling deeper. Even at rest, this conditioning of air happens continuously, quietly preparing each breath for the sensitive structures below. The mouth can also serve as an entryway, especially during sleep or exertion, offering a wider but less filtered path inward. From the nasal and oral openings, air moves toward a shared chamber known as the pharynx. This region sits behind the nose and mouth and acts as a common passageway for both air and food. It is a simple space in concept, yet highly coordinated in function. Muscles and reflexes ensure that air continues toward the lungs while swallowed material is directed elsewhere. This coordination usually occurs without awareness, even during sleep, maintaining separation between breathing and digestion. Below the pharynx lies the larynx, often referred to as the voice box. While it plays a role in sound production, its more fundamental purpose in breathing is protection and guidance. The larynx remains open to allow air to pass freely, and during swallowing, it closes briefly to protect the airway. Within it are firm yet flexible structures, made of cartilage, maintaining an open channel so air can flow smoothly downward. Continuing deeper, air enters the trachea, a straight, sturdy tube extending into the chest. The trachea is reinforced by C-shaped rings of cartilage that prevent collapse while still allowing flexibility. This design ensures that even when the neck moves or pressure changes occur in the chest, the airway remains open. The inner lining of the trachea is covered with mucus and tiny beating structures called cilia, which slowly move trapped particles upward, away from the lungs. As the trachea descends, it reaches a point where it divides into two primary branches known as the main bronchi. One bronchus leads to the right lung, the other to the left. This division marks the entrance into the lungs themselves. From here onward, the airway begins to branch repeatedly, forming a structure often compared to an inverted tree. Each division becomes slightly narrower, directing air into progressively smaller regions. Inside the lungs, the bronchi branch into smaller bronchi, and then into even finer bronchioles. With each division, the airway walls change subtly. Cartilage becomes less prominent, and smooth muscle becomes more influential. These bronchioles are capable of gently narrowing or widening, adjusting airflow distribution. This adjustment usually happens without conscious awareness, responding to the body's needs moment by moment. Eventually, the bronchioles lead to terminal passages that open into clusters of tiny air sacs known as alveoli. These alveoli are the true destination of inhaled air. They are numerous beyond easy comprehension, numbering in the hundreds of millions. Each alveolus is thin-walled and closely surrounded by capillaries, the smallest blood vessels. It is here that oxygen passes into the blood and carbon dioxide passes out. The lungs themselves are divided into lobes, with the right lung containing 3 and the left lung containing 2, making room for the heart. Despite this asymmetry, both lungs work together seamlessly. Airflow and blood flow are carefully matched so that gas exchange remains efficient across the entire surface. The lungs fill much of the thoracic cavity, yet they remain light and compressible, adapting easily to movement. It is important to note that the lungs do not attach directly to the chest wall. Instead, they are enclosed within thin membranes that allow them to glide smoothly as the chest expands and contracts. This arrangement allows movement without friction, ensuring that breathing remains effortless and quiet. The lungs follow the motion of the chest not because they are pulled, but because pressure changes encourage them to expand. The entire respiratory system can be thought of as having 2 broad zones. The conducting zone includes all the structures that move air inward and outward, from the nose down to the smallest bronchioles. No gas exchange occurs here. Its role is simply to deliver air efficiently. The respiratory zone, made up of the alveoli, is where exchange occurs. This separation of roles simplifies function and increases efficiency. As this map settles in the mind, it becomes clear that breathing is not confined to a single organ. It is a coordinated pathway involving many regions, each contributing quietly. No single structure works alone. The success of the system depends on smooth transitions, open passages, and delicate surfaces that remain intact and moist. During sleep, this entire map remains active. Air continues to travel the same pathways, guided by the same structures, regardless of awareness. Muscle tone may decrease slightly, and airflow patterns may shift gently, but the route remains unchanged. The system is built to function reliably in rest. Holding this broad orientation allows future details to find their place naturally. When later parts describe movement, pressure, or exchange, these ideas will settle into this map without effort. For now, it is enough to know where air travels, how it is guided, and where its journey ends. The respiratory system is not dramatic in its design. It is practical, layered, and efficient. As the night deepens, this map can remain in the background, a quiet understanding that mirrors the steady movement of air within the chest. 3. The chest as a breathing container. With the pathways of air now gently mapped, attention can settle on the space that allows breathing to happen at all. The chest is not simply a rigid box holding the lungs in place. It is a flexible, living container designed to protect delicate organs while still permitting constant, rhythmic movement. This balance between stability and motion is essential, and it unfolds quietly with every breath, day and night, without interruption. The chest, also known as the thoracic cavity, is formed primarily by the rib cage, the sternum at the front, and the spine at the back. Together, these structures create a protective enclosure around the lungs and the heart. The ribs curve around the sides of the body, forming a framework that is strong enough to shield vital organs, yet light enough to move in subtle, coordinated ways. This dual role of protection and movement is central to the mechanics of breathing. Each rib is connected at the back to the thoracic spine and at the front to the sternum, either directly or indirectly through cartilage. These connections are not fixed like welded joints. Instead, they allow small degrees of movement, hinging and rotating slightly as the chest expands and contracts. Though the movement of any single rib is minimal, the combined motion of all the ribs creates a meaningful change in the volume of the chest cavity. The sternum, or breastbone, sits at the center of the chest and serves as an anchor point for several ribs. It is flat, firm, and resilient. During inhalation, it moves subtly forward and upward, increasing the front-to-back dimension of the chest. This motion is gentle and often unnoticed. Behind the chest, the thoracic spine provides both support and flexibility. It maintains posture while allowing the rib cage to move freely. The natural curve of the spine helps distribute forces evenly and prevents strain during repeated breathing cycles. Even during sleep, when posture changes, the spine and ribs adapt smoothly, maintaining space for the lungs to expand. Between each rib lie the intercostal spaces, filled with muscles, nerves, and blood vessels. These spaces are not empty gaps, but dynamic regions that allow the rib cage to change shape. The muscles here play an important role in lifting and stabilizing the ribs during breathing, though their activity is typically quiet and automatic. Their work is part of the background rhythm of respiration. The chest cavity is sealed at the bottom by the diaphragm, a broad, dome-shaped muscle that separates the chest from the abdomen. Though the diaphragm will be explored more deeply later, its presence here is essential to understanding the chest as a container. When the diaphragm moves downward, it increases the vertical dimension of the chest cavity, adding to the space available for the lungs. This movement works in harmony with the ribs, not in isolation. What makes the chest especially effective as a breathing container is that it is airtight. The space surrounding the lungs is sealed, allowing pressure changes to occur reliably. When the chest expands, the pressure inside this sealed cavity decreases slightly, and air flows into the lungs naturally, without effort. When the chest relaxes and returns toward its resting shape, pressure increases gently, and air flows out. This relationship between volume and pressure follows simple physical principles, yet its result feels effortless. The chest does not need to actively pull air in. It only needs to change shape. Air responds automatically, moving from areas of higher pressure to lower pressure. In this way, breathing relies on cooperation between structure and physics rather than force. The chest also accommodates changes in breathing demand. During quiet rest, movements are small and efficient. During deeper breathing, such as during activity, the rib cage can expand further, and the diaphragm can descend more fully. The container adapts smoothly, offering more space without losing stability. This adaptability allows breathing to scale up or down as needed. During sleep, the chest continues its work in a more subdued rhythm. Muscle tone decreases slightly, and breathing often becomes slower and more regular. The rib cage still moves, though with less visible effort. The container remains reliable, adjusting to the horizontal position of the body and the shifting influence of gravity. Even in deep sleep, the chest maintains enough movement to support steady gas exchange. It is also important to recognize that the chest does not act alone. Its movements are coordinated with signals from the nervous system, which adjusts breathing patterns based on the body's needs. These signals ensure that the container expands just enough and no more than necessary. Efficiency, rather than force, defines the system. The chest wall also plays a role in sensory feedback. Stretch receptors within muscles and connective tissues send information back to the brain, helping regulate breathing rhythm. This feedback loop operates quietly, refining the pattern of movement without conscious input. It contributes to the feeling of ease that accompanies natural breathing. As time passes, the chest undergoes gradual changes across the lifespan. In youth, it is highly flexible, moving easily with each breath. With age, some stiffness may develop, but the fundamental design remains effective. The body adapts, finding new balances that preserve function. Breathing continues, guided by the same principles, even as structures slowly change. Holding this image of the chest as a breathing container allows future concepts to settle comfortably. When pressure changes are discussed, or when muscle movements are described, they will take place within this space. The chest provides the stage on which breathing occurs, steady and dependable. For now, it is enough to rest with the understanding that every breath depends on this quiet container. The ribs, sternum, spine, and diaphragm work together seamlessly, creating space and guiding airflow without demand or urgency. As the night deepens, the chest continues its gentle motion, expanding and releasing, maintaining the calm rhythm that supports rest and restoration. 4. The pleura and the quiet art of lung movement. As breathing continues steadily in the background, there is an often unseen relationship that makes this movement smooth and effortless. The lungs do not simply expand and contract against the chest wall like dry surfaces rubbing together. Instead, they are supported by an elegant system of thin membranes and fluid that allow motion to occur almost without friction. This system is known as the pleura, and though it is rarely felt or noticed, it is essential to the ease and silence of every breath. The pleura consists of two delicate layers of tissue. One layer lies directly against the surface of the lungs, closely following every curve and fold. This is known as the visceral pleura. The other layer lines the inside of the chest wall, the ribs, and the diaphragm. This is called the parietal pleura. These two layers are continuous with each other, forming a sealed envelope around each lung. Between these two layers is a very thin space known as the pleural cavity. Despite its name, this cavity is not an empty gap. It contains a small amount of pleural fluid, just enough to coat the surfaces of the membranes. This fluid acts as a lubricant, allowing the layers to glide smoothly over one another as the lungs move. Without it, each breath would involve friction and resistance, making breathing uncomfortable and inefficient. What makes the pleural system especially remarkable is that it allows movement while maintaining close contact. The lungs are not attached to the chest wall by muscle or connective tissue. Instead, they are held gently in place by the negative pressure within the pleural cavity. This pressure keeps the lungs expanded and closely opposed to the chest wall, ensuring that when the chest moves, the lungs follow effortlessly. As the chest expands during inhalation, the parietal pleura moves outward with the rib cage and diaphragm. Because of the slight suction within the pleural space and the smoothness of the fluid-coated surfaces, the visceral pleura and the lungs themselves are drawn outward as well. This coordinated movement allows the lungs to expand evenly, creating space for air to flow in. During exhalation, the process reverses. The pleural layers continue to glide smoothly, maintaining contact without sticking or slipping apart. This back and forth motion occurs thousands of times each day, usually without any sensation at all. The pleural fluid itself is constantly produced and reabsorbed in small amounts, maintaining the right balance. Too little fluid would increase friction, while too much could interfere with lung expansion. The body regulates this balance carefully, ensuring that the environment remains optimal for movement. This regulation continues even during sleep, quietly supporting the rhythm of breathing. Another important role of the pleura is compartmentalization. Each lung is enclosed within its own pleural sac. This separation means that changes affecting one lung do not automatically spread to the other. It adds a layer of protection and stability to the system, helping maintain balanced breathing even if conditions differ slightly from one side to the other. The pleura also plays a subtle role in sensory awareness. The parietal pleura contains nerve endings that can detect stretch and pressure. While this sensation rarely reaches conscious awareness under normal conditions, it provides feedback to the nervous system. This information helps fine-tune breathing movements, ensuring that expansion and relaxation remain within comfortable ranges. From a mechanical perspective, the pleural system transforms the chest and lungs into a unified unit. Rather than the lungs acting independently, they become responsive partners to the movements of the chest wall. This partnership reduces the effort required to breathe and increases efficiency. Airflow becomes a natural consequence of motion rather than something that must be forced. During sleep, this system continues its work without interruption. As muscle tone decreases and breathing becomes more regular, the pleura ensures that each breath remains smooth and silent. The lungs slide easily against the chest wall, adapting to changes in position as the body shifts. Whether lying on the back or the side, the pleural relationship adjusts automatically. It is also worth noting how thin and fragile these membranes are, and yet how durable they prove to be over a lifetime of use. Despite constant motion, the pleura maintains its integrity through careful lubrication and gentle pressures. This balance between delicacy and resilience is a recurring theme in the respiratory system. In calm conditions, such as rest or sleep, the pleural pressures remain stable and predictable. During deeper or more forceful breathing, pressures change slightly, but always within a range that supports smooth movement. Understanding the pleura adds another layer to the picture of breathing as a cooperative process. The lungs do not move on their own, and the chest does not act in isolation. The pleural membranes form a quiet interface between them, translating movement into expansion and expansion into airflow. This interface is essential, yet almost invisible in daily life. As this idea settles, it becomes easier to appreciate how many elements work together simply to allow air to come and go. It does not create sensation, sound, or effort. Its success is measured by its absence from awareness. As the night deepens and breathing continues its gentle rhythm, the pleural layers continue to glide, maintaining harmony between structure and motion. The lungs rise and fall within their smooth envelopes, supported by fluid, pressure, and balance. This quiet art of movement goes on uninterrupted, sustaining rest, comfort, and the steady exchange that keeps the body at ease. 5. The airway pipeline from trachea to bronchi, with the lungs resting smoothly within the chest and the pleural layers allowing effortless motion. Attention can now drift to the pathway that delivers air into those lungs. This pathway is not a single hollow tube, but a carefully reinforced and branching pipeline designed to remain open, clean, and reliable at all times. From the moment air leaves the throat and enters the chest, it is guided by structures whose only task is to ensure steady passage, breath after breath, without collapse or interruption. The trachea is the first major airway to carry air deep into the body. It begins just below the larynx and descends through the neck into the upper chest. At rest, it measures only a few centimeters in diameter, yet it must remain open under varying pressures, body positions, and breathing demands. This stability is achieved through a series of firm yet flexible cartilage rings that line the tracheal wall. These rings are shaped like the letter C, open at the back where the trachea lies against the esophagus. It provides rigidity at the front and sides, preventing collapse, while allowing slight flexibility at the back. This flexibility accommodates swallowing and subtle changes in pressure without compromising airflow. The trachea is thus both sturdy and adaptable, a hallmark of respiratory design. The inner surface of the trachea is lined with a moist mucous membrane. This lining produces mucus, a sticky substance that traps dust, particles, and microorganisms carried in with the air. Embedded within this lining are countless microscopic cilia, tiny hair-like structures that beat rhythmically upward. Their coordinated motion slowly moves trapped material back toward the throat. This cleansing mechanism operates continuously, even during sleep. It is quiet, slow, and effective, ensuring that the deeper regions of the lungs remain as clean as possible. The trachea is therefore not just a passageway, but an active participant in airway maintenance, protecting delicate lung tissue from environmental exposure. As the trachea descends into the chest, it eventually reaches a point where it divides into two main branches. One branch enters the right lung, and the other enters the left. Although similar in structure, the two main bronchi differ slightly in size and angle, reflecting the asymmetry of the lungs themselves. The right main bronchus is typically wider and more vertical, leading into a lung with 3 lobes. The left main bronchus is slightly narrower and angles more horizontally, accommodating the space occupied by the heart. Despite these differences, both bronchi perform the same essential function, delivering air efficiently into the lungs. Like the trachea, the bronchi are reinforced with cartilage, though the cartilage here becomes more segmented rather than forming complete rings. This segmented support maintains airway openness, while allowing greater flexibility as the bronchi branch and curve within the lungs. The walls of the bronchi also contain smooth muscle, which plays a growing role as the airways become smaller. As air travels deeper, each main bronchus divides into lobar bronchi, one for each lobe of the lung. These then divide further into segmental bronchi, each supplying a specific region of lung tissue. This branching pattern ensures that air can be distributed evenly throughout the lungs, reaching all areas efficiently rather than pooling in a single space. Throughout this branching network, the internal lining remains similar in function. Mucus traps particles, and cilia move them upward. The airways are therefore self-cleaning, provided they remain moist and unobstructed. This process requires no conscious input and continues seamlessly during rest. The airway pipeline is designed to minimize resistance while maximizing control. The gradual decrease in diameter with each branching step prevents sudden pressure drops or turbulence. Air flows smoothly, guided by shape rather than force. This smoothness reduces the work required for breathing, contributing to the sense of ease felt during quiet respiration. As breathing deepens, airflow increases, but the pipeline remains stable. The cartilage prevents collapse even when pressure inside the chest changes rapidly. This stability is especially important during inhalation, when pressure inside the airways drops slightly. Without reinforcement, the airways could narrow or close, disrupting airflow. During exhalation, pressure inside the airways rises slightly as the lungs recoil. The structure of the bronchi accommodates this change without difficulty. The smooth muscle within their walls allows subtle adjustments in diameter, fine-tuning airflow distribution according to the body's needs. These adjustments occur automatically, guided by signals from the nervous system and local chemical conditions. During sleep, the airway pipeline continues its work in a calm, predictable pattern. Muscle tone throughout the body decreases, but the cartilage-supported airways remain open. Air continues to move steadily, guided by the same branching pathways. It is also worth noting that the airway pipeline is sensitive but not fragile. These responses are designed to restore clarity and protect deeper regions of the lungs. Under normal conditions, however, the system operates quietly, without drawing attention. The trachea and bronchi represent the final shared pathways before air reaches the smallest airways and the alveoli beyond. Their role is not to exchange gases themselves, but to ensure that air arrives cleanly, evenly, and reliably. As this understanding settles, the airway pipeline can be imagined as a calm, branching river system, guiding airflow inward and outward without turbulence or urgency. Each breath follows familiar channels, shaped by structure and maintained by gentle internal motion. In the quiet of the night, as awareness softens, this pipeline continues to function without interruption. Air moves through reinforced passages, divides smoothly, and reaches every region it needs to reach. The trachea and bronchi perform their work silently, sustaining the steady rhythm of breathing that supports rest, balance, and the ongoing calm of the body. 6 bronchioles and the fine branches of airflow. As air continues its quiet journey beyond the larger bronchi, it enters a region where structure becomes finer and control more subtle. The bronchioles are the smallest conducting airways of the respiratory system, and though they lack the firmness of cartilage, they offer a different kind of precision. Here, airflow is gently regulated, distributed, and refined before it reaches the delicate spaces where gas exchange will occur. This region works silently, adapting moment by moment, without demanding awareness. Bronchioles arise as the bronchi divide again and again within the lungs. With each division, the airway diameter becomes smaller, and the walls become thinner. Cartilage, which provided stability in the trachea and bronchi, gradually disappears. In its place, smooth muscle becomes the defining feature of the airway wall. This shift marks an important transition from rigid support to flexible control. Smooth muscle in the bronchioles forms a continuous layer around the airway. Unlike skeletal muscle, it does not require conscious instruction. It responds automatically to signals from the nervous system, circulating chemicals, and local conditions within the lungs. By tightening or relaxing, this muscle can subtly change the diameter of the airway, influencing how easily air flows through. When the bronchioles widen, resistance to airflow decreases, allowing more air to reach the deeper regions of the lungs. When they narrow, resistance increases, slowing airflow. These changes are usually small and well-balanced, fine-tuning distribution rather than creating noticeable obstruction. The goal is efficiency, ensuring that air is delivered evenly across the lung tissue. The bronchioles also mark the final portion of the conducting zone. Air passing through them has not yet reached the sites of gas exchange, but it is now very close. The walls of the bronchioles are lined with a simpler epithelium than the larger airways, reflecting the shift from protection toward precision. Mucus is present in smaller amounts, and cilia are fewer, as the air has already been filtered upstream. As bronchioles branch further, they become terminal bronchioles, the last purely conducting airways. Beyond these lie the respiratory bronchioles, where the first alveoli begin to appear along the airway walls. This gradual transition allows airflow to slow and spread gently, preparing it for efficient exchange rather than abrupt delivery. One of the defining features of bronchioles is their responsiveness. Local chemical conditions, such as levels of carbon dioxide or oxygen, can influence smooth muscle tone. If a region of lung tissue is well ventilated, bronchioles may relax slightly, encouraging continued airflow. If ventilation is less effective, subtle narrowing may redirect air elsewhere. This local regulation helps match airflow to blood flow, improving overall efficiency. This process occurs continuously and quietly, without awareness. Even during sleep, bronchioles adjust gently to maintain balance. As breathing slows and deepens, airflow patterns change, and the bronchioles respond accordingly. Their flexibility allows the lungs to remain efficient across a wide range of breathing states. The absence of cartilage in bronchioles might seem like a vulnerability, but it is a deliberate design choice. Cartilage would limit flexibility and responsiveness. Instead, the surrounding lung tissue and the natural pressure relationships within the chest help keep bronchioles open. As the lungs expand, the surrounding tissue pulls gently outward on the bronchioles, a process known as radial traction. This helps maintain airway patency during inhalation. During exhalation, as the lungs recoil, this outward pull decreases slightly. Even then, under normal conditions, bronchioles remain open enough to allow smooth airflow. The balance between muscle tone, tissue support, and pressure ensures stability without rigidity. The bronchioles also play a role in the sensation of breathing, though this rarely reaches conscious awareness. Specialized receptors within the airway walls detect, stretch, and airflow, sending information back to the brain. This feedback contributes to the regulation of breathing rhythm and depth, helping maintain comfort and balance. In restful breathing, such as during sleep, bronchiolar tone is typically low. The airways remain gently open, and airflow is smooth and unhurried. The reduced demand allows the system to operate at its most economical level, conserving energy while maintaining adequate gas exchange. The sheer number of bronchioles is remarkable. Their extensive branching creates a vast internal network, ensuring that no region of lung tissue is far from an airway. This distribution reduces the distance air must travel to reach alveoli, minimizing diffusion time and improving efficiency. It also means that small adjustments in bronchiolar tone can have meaningful effects across large areas. Despite their importance, bronchioles rarely draw attention to themselves unless something disrupts their balance. Under normal conditions, they remain silent partners in breathing, adjusting continuously without sensation or sound. Their success lies in their ability to respond without being noticed. As this image settles, it becomes easier to picture airflow not as a single stream, but as countless gentle currents moving through fine passages, guided and regulated with care. Each bronchiole contributes a small adjustment, and together they create a balanced whole. As the night continues and awareness softens, these fine branches of airflow continue their quiet work. Air moves smoothly, guided by flexible walls and subtle signals. The bronchioles maintain their gentle control, ensuring that each breath reaches where it is needed most. In this way, they support the steady, effortless rhythm of breathing that carries the body deeper into rest. 7 alveoli and the quiet spaces of gas exchange. As airflow moves through the fine bronchioles and slows almost to stillness, it arrives at the most delicate and essential structures of the respiratory system. These are the alveoli, tiny air-filled spaces where the true purpose of breathing is fulfilled. Everything that came before, the branching airways, the flexible chest, the smooth pleural layers, exists to serve these quiet chambers. Here, without sound or effort, oxygen enters the blood and carbon dioxide leaves it, sustaining life with remarkable consistency. Alveoli are microscopic sacs clustered together like soft bunches of grapes at the ends of the smallest airways. Each individual alveolus is extremely small, yet their number is vast. Together, they create an internal surface area so large that it rivals the size of an entire room, folded gently inside the lungs. This expansive surface is not meant to impress, but to ensure that gas exchange can occur efficiently and without urgency. The walls of the alveoli are extraordinarily thin, composed of a single layer of flat cells. This thinness is essential. Oxygen and carbon dioxide must cross this boundary quickly, and the shorter the distance, the easier the passage. Directly against the alveolar wall lies a dense network of capillaries, the smallest blood vessels in the body. In many places, the walls of the alveoli and the capillaries are so close that they appear almost merged, separated only by a minimal barrier. Blood arriving at these capillaries carries carbon dioxide from the body's tissues and has a lower concentration of oxygen. Air within the alveoli contains a higher concentration of oxygen and a lower concentration of carbon dioxide. This difference creates a natural gradient, and gases move across the thin membranes without force, simply following physical principles. Oxygen drifts into the blood, and carbon dioxide drifts into the alveolar air. This movement is known as diffusion, and it requires no energy from the body. It depends only on concentration differences and the permeability of the membranes. The lungs do not push oxygen into the blood. They simply provide the right conditions and allow the process to unfold. This simplicity is part of what makes breathing so reliable, even during sleep or deep rest. Each alveolus is kept open and stable by a thin film of fluid lining its inner surface. Without surfactant, the walls of the alveoli would tend to collapse inward, especially during exhalation. Surfactant allows the alveoli to remain open with minimal effort, making breathing smoother and more energy efficient. The alveoli are not rigid structures. They gently expand during inhalation as air enters and relax during exhalation as air leaves. This movement is small but constant. Because each alveolus is connected to many others, the expansion is shared and evenly distributed. No single alveolus bears the full strain of breathing. Instead, the workload is spread across millions of tiny units. Blood flow through the alveolar capillaries is equally well matched. As air fills the alveoli, blood moves through the surrounding vessels at a pace that allows sufficient time for gas exchange. This matching of ventilation and perfusion is a central feature of efficient breathing. It happens quietly, guided by local signals that adjust blood vessel diameter and airflow distribution as needed. During rest and sleep, this matching becomes especially stable. Breathing slows slightly, and blood flow adjusts accordingly. The alveoli continue their work without interruption, maintaining steady oxygen levels and removing carbon dioxide at a pace that supports deep rest. There is no need for awareness or control. The system operates automatically, with gentle precision. The alveoli also play a role in maintaining fluid balance within the lungs. The thin walls allow some fluid movement, but this is carefully regulated. Specialized cells and pressure relationships prevent fluid from accumulating within the air spaces. This balance keeps the alveoli dry enough for gas exchange while maintaining the thin fluid layer needed for surfactant function. Within the alveolar walls are several types of cells, each with a quiet role. Some cells specialize in gas exchange, while others produce surfactant or support immune defense. Tiny immune cells patrol the alveolar surfaces, ready to remove particles or microorganisms that may have slipped past earlier defenses. This protective function operates silently, without inflammation or sensation under normal conditions. Despite their fragility, alveoli are remarkably resilient. They withstand millions of breathing cycles over a lifetime, expanding and relaxing with dependable regularity. Their durability comes from their simplicity and from the supportive environment created by surrounding tissues, pressures, and fluids. As the body changes position during sleep, alveolar ventilation shifts slightly. Gravity influences which regions of the lungs receive more air and blood, but the system adapts smoothly. Alveoli in different regions take turns being more active, ensuring that no single area is overused. This redistribution supports long-term efficiency and comfort. The quiet success of the alveoli is reflected in how rarely they are noticed. Under healthy conditions, there is no sensation associated with gas exchange. Oxygen enters the blood, carbon dioxide leaves it, and the body remains in balance. This absence of sensation is a sign that the system is working as intended. As understanding settles, it becomes clear that breathing is not a dramatic act but a steady exchange happening in countless tiny spaces. The alveoli do not rush or strain. They simply provide a meeting place for air and blood, allowing natural laws to do the rest. As the night deepens and awareness softens further, these quiet spaces continue their work. Millions of alveoli gently open and relax. Blood flows calmly past their walls, and gases exchange without sound or effort. This silent activity supports every cell, sustaining rest, warmth, and balance, one effortless breath at a time. 8. Diffusion and the gentle exchange of gases. With the quiet spaces of the alveoli now in mind, attention can rest on the simple principle that allows breathing to fulfill its purpose. The movement of oxygen into the blood and carbon dioxide out of it does not depend on pumping, pulling, or effort. It relies instead on diffusion, a natural process that unfolds wherever differences in concentration exist. This process is steady, predictable, and calm, mirroring the unhurried rhythm of nighttime breathing. Diffusion occurs because molecules are always in motion. Even in stillness, gases move randomly, spreading out from areas where they are more concentrated to areas where they are less so. In the lungs, this principle works continuously and reliably. The air within the alveoli contains a higher concentration of oxygen than the blood arriving in the surrounding capillaries. At the same time, the blood contains a higher concentration of carbon dioxide than the air inside the alveoli. These differences are enough to set diffusion in motion. As oxygen molecules drift across the thin alveolar walls and into the blood, carbon dioxide molecules drift in the opposite direction. No signal needs to be sent, and no muscle needs to contract. The membranes simply allow passage, and the gases move on their own. This simplicity is one of the great strengths of the respiratory system. Because diffusion depends on physical laws rather than biological effort, it remains reliable even during deep sleep or unconsciousness. The effectiveness of diffusion depends on several quiet factors working together. One of these is surface area. The vast number of alveoli provides an enormous area over which gases can exchange. This allows large amounts of oxygen to enter the blood with each breath, even though the movement across any single alveolus is small. Another factor is distance. The thinness of the alveolar and capillary walls keeps the distance gases must cross to a minimum. Concentration gradients also play an essential role. Fresh air entering the alveoli maintains a relatively high level of oxygen. At the same time, blood returning from the body's tissues carries relatively high levels of carbon dioxide. As long as these gradients are maintained, diffusion continues smoothly. Breathing refreshes the alveolar air, and circulation refreshes the blood, sustaining the difference needed for ongoing exchange. It is important to note that oxygen does not enter the blood as a sudden rush. It enters gradually and evenly. As oxygen diffuses into the blood, this binding helps keep the concentration of free oxygen in the blood low, which in turn maintains the gradient that encourages continued diffusion. In this way, transport and diffusion work together, reinforcing one another. Carbon dioxide behaves in a similar but opposite manner. As it diffuses out of the blood and into the alveoli, its concentration in the blood decreases, allowing more carbon dioxide to move out of the tissues and into circulation. This chain of movement ensures that waste gases are removed steadily, preventing buildup and maintaining balance within the body. During quiet breathing, such as during rest or sleep, diffusion operates at a comfortable pace. Oxygen needs are lower, and carbon dioxide production is reduced. The system adjusts naturally, with slower airflow and blood flow still providing sufficient exchange. There is no need for rapid breathing or forceful movement. The gradients remain adequate, and diffusion continues without strain. The temperature and moisture of the alveoli also support diffusion. Warm, moist air allows gases to dissolve slightly, facilitating their movement across membranes. The lungs maintain this environment automatically, regardless of external conditions. Even in cooler air, the respiratory system warms and humidifies inhaled air before it reaches the alveoli. Diffusion is also influenced by pressure differences, particularly partial pressures. Each gas in a mixture exerts its own pressure, and diffusion occurs from areas of higher partial pressure to lower partial pressure. In the lungs, the partial pressure of oxygen is higher in the alveoli than in the blood, while the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is higher in the blood than in the alveoli. These differences guide the exchange with quiet precision. What makes diffusion especially well suited to breathing is that it scales naturally. As activity increases and the body consumes more oxygen, the concentration of oxygen in the blood decreases slightly, increasing the gradient. Carbon dioxide production rises, increasing its gradient as well. Diffusion responds automatically, increasing the rate of exchange without requiring conscious control. During sleep, the opposite occurs. Metabolic demand decreases, gradients soften slightly, and diffusion slows accordingly. This slowing does not compromise balance because the demand is lower. The system remains matched to the body's needs at all times, adjusting continuously and smoothly. The absence of sensation associated with diffusion is another sign of its efficiency. Under healthy conditions, there is no feeling of oxygen entering the blood or carbon dioxide leaving it. The process is silent and invisible. Awareness is free to drift, even as essential exchange continues uninterrupted. Diffusion also provides resilience. Because it depends on physical properties rather than complex signaling, it remains reliable under a wide range of conditions. As long as air reaches the alveoli and blood reaches the capillaries, exchange will occur. This redundancy supports survival and comfort across many states of rest and activity. As the night deepens, it can be comforting to reflect on how little effort is required to sustain life. Each breath refreshes the alveolar air. Each heartbeat delivers blood to the capillaries. Diffusion bridges the two, quietly and faithfully. There is no rush, no command, only steady movement guided by natural laws. Understanding diffusion does not require holding equations or technical detail in mind. It is enough to know that gases move where they are needed, guided by simple differences and supported by thoughtful design. This knowledge can settle gently, like the slow settling of breath itself. As sleep approaches more closely, diffusion continues its quiet work. Oxygen drifts inward, carbon dioxide drifts outward, and balance is maintained without awareness. In the stillness of the night, this gentle exchange carries on, breath after breath, sustaining the calm rhythm of the resting body, surfactant, and the stability of the alveoli. As the gentle exchange of gases continues within the alveoli, there is another quiet presence that makes this exchange possible with such ease. This presence is not a structure that can be easily seen, nor a movement that can be felt, but a thin molecular layer that lines the inner surface of every alveolus. Known as surfactant, it plays a central role in keeping the lungs stable, efficient, and comfortable across every breath, especially during the calm rhythm of sleep. Inside each alveolus, the surface is not dry. It is coated with a very thin film of fluid. This moisture is essential for gas exchange, allowing oxygen and carbon dioxide to dissolve slightly before crossing the alveolar wall. However, fluid has a natural tendency to create surface tension, a force that pulls surfaces inward. In the alveoli, this inward pull would, without intervention, encourage the tiny air sacs to shrink or collapse, particularly during exhalation. Surfactant exists to counteract this tendency. These molecules spread across the fluid lining, reducing surface tension and allowing the alveoli to remain open with far less effort. In essence, surfactant makes the alveoli more stable and easier to inflate, transforming breathing into a smooth, economical process. The importance of this effect becomes clearer when imagining the size of the alveoli. Because they are so small, surface tension forces would be proportionally strong without surfactant. Larger spaces are less affected by surface tension, but tiny ones are highly sensitive to it. Surfactant neutralizes this challenge, ensuring that even the smallest alveoli can open and close gently without collapsing. As inhalation begins and air enters the alveoli, Surfactant allows the walls to expand smoothly. As exhalation follows and air leaves, surfactant prevents the walls from sticking together. This balance allows alveoli to remain partially open at the end of each breath, reducing the effort required to reopen them with the next inhale. This is especially important during quiet breathing, when breaths are shallow and gentle. Surfactant also helps maintain uniformity among alveoli. Without it, smaller alveoli would tend to collapse into larger ones due to differences in surface tension. Surfactant adjusts its effect dynamically, reducing surface tension more strongly in smaller alveoli. This equalizing influence helps keep alveoli evenly inflated, supporting consistent gas exchange across the lungs. The production of surfactant is continuous. Specialized cells, known as type 2 alveolar cells, synthesize and secrete it steadily. This production adapts to the needs of the lungs, increasing when demand rises and maintaining a stable baseline during rest. Even during sleep, these cells quietly replenish surfactant, ensuring that the alveolar environment remains optimal. The presence of surfactant also contributes to lung compliance, a measure of how easily the lungs expand. High compliance means that the lungs can inflate with minimal effort. Surfactant increases compliance by reducing resistance at the alveolar surface. This allows breathing to remain smooth and energy efficient, conserving resources while maintaining adequate ventilation. During deep rest, when breathing is slower and muscle activity is reduced, surfactant becomes especially important. It ensures that the alveoli remain open, even when inhalation effort is minimal. Without it, shallow breaths during sleep could lead to areas of collapse, reducing gas exchange efficiency. Surfactant prevents this, allowing restful breathing to continue uninterrupted. Surfactant also plays a role in protecting the alveoli from mechanical stress. By smoothing surface tension forces, it reduces uneven strain on the alveolar walls. This protection contributes to the long-term durability of the lungs, allowing them to withstand millions of breathing cycles over a lifetime. In addition to its mechanical role, surfactant participates in immune defense. This defensive function operates quietly, supporting lung health without provoking unnecessary inflammation or sensation. The balance of surfactant is carefully regulated. Too little would increase surface tension and make breathing more difficult. Too much could interfere with gas exchange. The body maintains this balance through feedback mechanisms that respond to lung expansion, chemical signals, and cellular activity. This regulation continues seamlessly during rest and sleep. As the body changes position during the night, surfactant helps the lungs adapt. Gravity influences how air and blood are distributed, and surfactant supports alveoli in less inflated regions, preventing collapse. This adaptability allows different areas of the lungs to share the workload over time, promoting efficiency and comfort. The effects of surfactant are rarely noticed because they remove difficulty rather than creating sensation. There is no feeling associated with its action. Its success is measured by the absence of resistance, the smoothness of breathing, and the ease with which the lungs respond to each gentle inhale. Understanding surfactant adds another layer to the picture of breathing as a cooperative system. Structure, pressure, diffusion, and chemistry all contribute. Surfactant sits at the interface between air and tissue, quietly ensuring that the physical environment of the alveoli remains stable and welcoming. As this idea settles, breathing can be appreciated as not only a movement of air, but as a carefully maintained state of balance. The alveoli are supported not just by surrounding tissue, but by molecular arrangements that reduce strain and encourage ease. As the night continues and awareness softens further, surfactant continues its quiet work. Each alveolus remains gently open, ready to receive air and exchange gases. The lungs rest in a state of readiness without tension or effort. In this calm stability, breathing flows on, steady and reliable, supporting deep rest and restoration, one gentle breath at a time. 10. The diaphragm and the primary motion of breathing. With the stability of the alveoli now gently established, attention can move toward the main driver of breathing itself. Beneath the lungs, separating the chest from the abdomen, lies a broad, dome-shaped muscle whose movement quietly shapes every breath. This muscle is the diaphragm, and though it works continuously from the moment of birth onward, it rarely draws attention to itself. Its motion is smooth, efficient, and deeply reliable, making it the central engine of calm, resting respiration. The diaphragm stretches across the body like a flexible floor at the base of the chest cavity, its edges attached to the lower ribs, the sternum, and the spine, forming a secure boundary between the thoracic cavity above and the abdominal cavity below. In its resting state, the diaphragm curves upward into the chest, creating a dome. It allows the diaphragm to generate meaningful changes in volume with relatively small movements. When inhalation begins, the diaphragm contracts. Rather than shortening dramatically, it flattens slightly, moving downward toward the abdomen. This downward motion increases the vertical dimension of the chest cavity. As the space inside the chest expands, pressure within it decreases. Air responds naturally to this change, flowing inward through the airways and into the lungs. No pulling is required. The diaphragm simply creates space, and air arrives. This process is remarkably economical. A relatively small movement of the diaphragm produces a significant change in chest volume, making it well suited for quiet, sustained breathing. During rest and sleep, the diaphragm performs most of the work of ventilation on its own, with minimal assistance from other muscles. This allows breathing to continue efficiently even as overall muscle tone decreases. As air fills the lungs and inhalation reaches its gentle peak, the diaphragm pauses briefly in its flattened position. Then, as exhalation begins, the diaphragm relaxes. Elastic forces within the lungs and chest wall encourage the diaphragm to return to its domed shape. As it rises, the volume of the chest cavity decreases slightly, pressure increases, and air flows out. Again, this movement requires little active effort. Exhalation during rest is largely passive. The diaphragm's movement also influences the abdominal organs below it. As the diaphragm descends during inhalation, it gently presses downward on the contents of the abdomen. This pressure is accommodated by the soft, flexible nature of abdominal tissues and by subtle outward movement of the abdominal wall. During exhalation, this pressure is released. This coordinated motion contributes to the characteristic rise and fall of the abdomen seen during relaxed breathing. This pattern is especially prominent during sleep, when breathing naturally shifts toward diaphragmatic dominance. The chest wall moves less, and the abdomen moves more. This is not a technique to be learned or practiced, but a natural outcome of muscle relaxation and efficient design. The diaphragm is richly supplied with nerves, particularly the phrenic nerves, which originate in the neck and travel downward to innervate the muscle. These nerves carry signals from the brainstem, where breathing rhythm is generated automatically. Each signal triggers a coordinated contraction of the diaphragm, setting the pace of respiration. This signaling continues without interruption, even in deep sleep. The rhythm produced by the diaphragm is steady but adaptable. If oxygen demand increases or carbon dioxide levels rise, the brainstem responds by increasing the frequency or strength of diaphragmatic contractions. If demand decreases, as it does during rest, the rhythm slows. These adjustments occur seamlessly, without conscious input, maintaining balance with minimal disruption. The diaphragm also contributes to posture and core stability. Its attachments to the spine and ribs mean that its tone influences trunk support. The diaphragm provides ventilation while maintaining enough stability to support the body. During sleep, when posture is supported by the surface beneath, the diaphragm can focus almost entirely on breathing. Over the course of a lifetime, the diaphragm performs an extraordinary amount of work. It contracts and relaxes tens of thousands of times each day. Despite this, it rarely fatigues. Its muscle fibers are well adapted for endurance, designed to sustain rhythmic activity over long periods without strain. The diaphragm does not work in isolation. Its movement coordinates with the intercostal muscles between the ribs and with subtle adjustments in the upper airway. However, during quiet breathing, its role is primary. Other muscles assist only minimally, allowing the diaphragm to carry the rhythm forward with efficiency. During sleep, especially in deeper stages, breathing becomes more regular and predictable. The diaphragm settles into a calm pattern, rising and falling like a slow tide. This regularity supports stable oxygen and carbon dioxide levels. The system reinforces itself, with steady breathing promoting deeper rest, and deeper rest promoting steady breathing. It is also worth noting that the diaphragm responds to emotional and physiological states. Though gently, stress, excitement, or sudden arousal can temporarily alter its rhythm, leading to quicker or shallower breaths. In contrast, calm environments and rest encourage slower, deeper movement. During sleep, with conscious thought suspended, the diaphragm returns to its most natural and efficient pattern. The simplicity of diaphragmatic breathing is part of its strength. There are no complex sequences or rapid changes required. The muscle contracts, space increases, air flows in, the muscle relaxes, space decreases, air flows out. This pattern repeats with slight variations, maintaining balance with minimal effort. As this understanding settles, the diaphragm can be appreciated not as something that needs to be controlled, but as something that already knows its task. Its motion is steady, responsive, and deeply ingrained. Awareness can drift without concern, trusting that this central muscle continues its work faithfully. As the night deepens and the body remains at rest, the diaphragm continues its gentle cycle. Downward, space opens. Upward, space releases. Air moves in and out in response, guided by pressure and supported by structure. This quiet, reliable motion sustains breathing through every stage of sleep, carrying the body forward in calm continuity, one effortless breath at a time. 11 intercostal muscles, and the subtle expansion of the rib cage. As the diaphragm continues its steady rhythm beneath the lungs, there is another group of muscles, quietly assisting with each breath. These muscles lie between the ribs, filling the narrow spaces that separate one rib from the next. Known as the intercostal muscles, they contribute to breathing in a way that is subtle, supportive, and usually unnoticed. Their role is not to overpower or replace the diaphragm, but to complement it, shaping the chest into a responsive structure that can expand and relax with ease. The rib cage is not a fixed frame. Though it appears solid, it is designed for movement. Each rib is capable of small rotations and shifts, and the intercostal muscles guide these movements. There are several layers of intercostal muscles, arranged in different directions, allowing them to influence rib motion with precision. This layered arrangement provides both strength and flexibility, ensuring that the chest wall can respond smoothly to changing breathing demands. During inhalation, the external intercostal muscles are the most active. When they contract, they gently lift the ribs upward and outward. This motion increases the width and depth of the chest cavity, adding to the space created by the downward movement of the diaphragm. The result is a coordinated expansion, where the chest enlarges in multiple directions at once. This multidimensional expansion allows the lungs to fill more evenly. The movement produced by the intercostal muscles is small but meaningful. Each rib rises only slightly, but because many ribs move together, the cumulative effect is significant. The sternum moves forward, the sides of the chest widen, and the overall volume of the thoracic cavity increases. This expansion lowers the pressure inside the chest, encouraging air to flow into the lungs without effort. During quiet breathing, such as during rest or sleep, the intercostal muscles contribute gently. Their contractions are light and economical, just enough to support the diaphragm and maintain chest shape. In this state, breathing feels effortless because no single muscle group is working intensely. As exhalation begins, the external intercostal muscles relax. The ribs then return toward their resting position, guided by gravity and by the natural elasticity of the chest wall. In quiet breathing, this return requires no active muscle contraction. The chest simply settles back, allowing air to flow out as pressure inside increases slightly. This passive release is a hallmark of efficient respiration. There is another group of intercostal muscles, known as the internal intercostals, which become more involved during forceful breathing. During rest and sleep, their activity is minimal. However, their presence adds stability to the chest wall, helping maintain proper alignment of the ribs even when muscle tone throughout the body decreases. This stability ensures that the chest remains a reliable container for the lungs at all times. The intercostal muscles also play a role in posture. By maintaining the spacing and alignment of the ribs, during sleep, when posture is supported by the surface beneath, these muscles can relax more fully, focusing almost entirely on breathing assistance. This shift allows energy to be conserved while still preserving effective ventilation. Nerve signals to the intercostal muscles originate in the spinal cord and are coordinated with signals to the diaphragm. This coordination ensures that rib movement and diaphragmatic movement occur in harmony rather than opposition. When the diaphragm descends, the ribs lift. When the diaphragm relaxes, the ribs settle. This timing creates a smooth, wave-like pattern of motion within the chest. This coordination is refined through sensory feedback. Stretch receptors within the muscles and joints of the rib cage send information back to the nervous system about chest expansion. This feedback helps adjust muscle activity, preventing overexpansion or unnecessary tension. The result is a breathing pattern that remains comfortable and efficient without conscious adjustment. During sleep, breathing patterns often become more regular, and intercostal muscle activity reflects this stability. The muscles maintain a gentle tone, responding predictably to each breathing cycle. This regularity supports consistent airflow and steady gas exchange. The flexibility provided by the intercostal muscles also allows the chest to adapt to changes in body position. Whether lying on the back, the side, or in a slightly curled posture, the rib cage can adjust its movement pattern. Some ribs may move slightly more than others, redistributing expansion in a way that remains effective despite shifts in gravity. Over time, the intercostal muscles adapt to the habitual breathing patterns of the individual. In general, the body favors efficiency. Muscles that are not needed for quiet breathing remain relaxed, while those that provide essential support maintain just enough tone to function. This adaptive balance reduces fatigue and promotes long-term comfort. The intercostal muscles are also involved in protective reflexes such as coughing or sneezing, where forceful chest movements are required. However, during calm breathing, these roles remain dormant. The muscles stay ready without being active, another example of the respiratory system's preparedness without tension. As awareness rests on this subtle assistance, it becomes clear that breathing is not the action of a single muscle, but a collaboration. The diaphragm leads, the intercostal muscles support, and the chest wall responds as a whole. This collaboration distributes effort evenly, preventing strain and promoting smooth motion. In the quiet of the night, when the mind is no longer directing attention outward, this collaboration continues uninterrupted. The ribs lift slightly, the chest widens, and air flows in. Then the ribs settle, the chest softens, and air flows out. These movements are gentle and repetitive, blending seamlessly into the background of rest. As the night deepens, the intercostal muscles maintain their quiet presence. They hold space when needed and release it when the moment passes. Alongside the diaphragm, they shape the chest into a responsive vessel for breathing. Together, they sustain the calm rhythm of respiration, supporting balance, comfort, and the gradual descent into deeper rest, one unhurried breath at a time. 12. Pressure, volume, and the calm mechanics of inhale and exhale. With the movements of the diaphragm and the rib cage now gently understood, it becomes possible to settle into the principle that ties those movements to the flow of air itself. Breathing is not driven by pulling or pushing in the way we might imagine lifting or carrying. Instead, it is guided by a quiet relationship between space and pressure. This relationship is simple, consistent, and dependable, allowing air to move naturally in response to changes within the chest. At rest, the pressure inside the lungs is nearly the same as the pressure of the air outside the body. In this balanced state, there is no movement of air. Nothing is being drawn in, and nothing is being pushed out. This moment of stillness occurs briefly at the end of each exhale, before the next breath begins. It is a natural pause, a point of equilibrium. When inhalation begins, the chest expands. The diaphragm moves downward, and the rib cage lifts and widens. These movements increase the volume of the chest cavity. As this volume increases, the pressure inside the lungs drops slightly below the pressure of the surrounding air. This difference, though small, is enough to set air in motion. Air flows from the area of higher pressure outside the body into the area of lower pressure inside the lungs. This movement follows a basic physical principle often summarized by the idea that when volume increases, pressure decreases, and when volume decreases, pressure increases. There is no need to hold this idea as a formula. It can be felt simply as the creation of space. When space opens, air enters. When space closes, air leaves. The body relies on this relationship constantly, trusting it to guide each breath. As inhalation continues, air fills the lungs, and pressure inside gradually rises again. By the time the lungs are comfortably filled, the pressure inside has nearly equalized with the pressure outside. At this point, airflow slows and comes to a gentle stop. There is no abrupt ending, only a soft transition as the system reaches balance once more. Exhalation begins not with force, but with release. The diaphragm relaxes and returns toward its domed shape. The rib cage settles downward and inward. These movements reduce the volume of the chest cavity. As volume decreases, pressure inside the lungs rises slightly above the pressure of the surrounding air. Once again, air responds automatically, flowing out of the lungs and into the environment. During quiet breathing, this outward flow requires very little muscular effort. The elasticity of the lungs and chest wall does much of the work. Like a stretched fabric returning to its resting shape, these tissues naturally recoil when the forces that expanded them are released. This recoil gently raises pressure and encourages air to leave without strain. This cycle of expanding volume and falling pressure, followed by decreasing volume and rising pressure, repeats itself with each breath. It is steady, predictable, and smooth. Because the pressure differences involved are small, breathing remains comfortable and efficient. There is no need for strong pressure changes under resting conditions. During sleep, this mechanical pattern becomes even more economical. Breathing slows, and each movement becomes slightly smaller. The pressure differences remain sufficient to move air, but they are minimized to match the lower metabolic demand. This reduction in effort conserves energy and supports deep rest. It is important to recognize that air does not move because the lungs actively pull it in. The lungs themselves have no ability to draw air. They respond to pressure changes created by the chest. In this way, breathing is a cooperative act between structure and physics. Muscles create space, pressure changes follow, and air moves accordingly. The airway system supports this process by remaining open and responsive. From the trachea to the smallest bronchioles, The airways maintain enough rigidity and flexibility to allow pressure differences to be transmitted efficiently. This ensures that when pressure drops in the alveoli, air can flow freely all the way down to the deepest regions of the lungs. The pleural relationship between the lungs and chest wall is also essential here. Because the lungs are held closely against the chest by pleural pressure, they expand and contract in harmony with chest movements. This close coupling ensures that changes in chest volume are translated directly into changes in lung volume. Even the blood within the lungs participates indirectly in this process. As air flows in and out, blood flow through the pulmonary capillaries remains steady, ready to exchange gases. The mechanical rhythm of breathing supports this exchange by refreshing alveolar air at just the right pace. During deeper or more active breathing, the same principles apply, but with greater range. The chest expands more, pressure drops further, and more air flows in. Exhalation may involve more active muscle contraction to reduce volume more quickly. Even then, the underlying relationship between volume and pressure remains unchanged. The system simply operates across a wider range. In the quiet context of nighttime rest, however, the mechanics remain gentle. The body chooses the smallest effective movements. Each breath is just enough, no more than necessary. This economy is a sign of a well-balanced system, tuned to conserve energy while maintaining stability. The brain monitors the effectiveness of this process through chemical feedback rather than mechanical awareness. If carbon dioxide levels rise slightly, breathing depth or rate adjusts subtly. These adjustments alter volume changes just enough to restore balance. The process remains smooth and rarely enters conscious awareness. Understanding this mechanical simplicity can be reassuring. Breathing does not depend on constant supervision or effort. It unfolds according to reliable physical relationships that have no need for instruction. Even when attention fades completely in sleep, these relationships continue to operate without interruption. As awareness softens, it can be helpful to imagine breathing not as something being done, but as something happening. Space opens, air enters, space releases, air leaves. This rhythm continues whether it is noticed or not. The body trusts this process fully. As the night deepens, the chest continues its subtle movements. Volume increases and decreases in a slow, steady cycle. Pressure shifts gently, guiding air in and out. There is no urgency, no resistance, only the calm application of natural laws in service of rest. In this way, pressure and volume form the quiet foundation of breathing. They shape each inhale and exhale with consistency and ease. Supported by structure and guided by physics, the breath continues its work through every stage of sleep, sustaining balance and comfort with each unhurried cycle. 13. Breathing, at rest and breathing with effort. As the mechanics of pressure and volume continue their quiet work, it becomes easier to notice that breathing is not fixed to a single pattern. Instead, it adjusts smoothly to the needs of the moment. The same system that supports calm, effortless breathing during rest is capable of expanding its range when greater demand arises. This flexibility is not abrupt or dramatic. It is gradual, layered, and carefully regulated, allowing breathing to shift between rest and effort without losing balance. At rest, breathing is economical. The body's demand for oxygen is modest, and carbon dioxide production is low. In this state, the diaphragm performs most of the work, moving gently downward and upward with each breath. The intercostal muscles assist just enough to support chest shape and expansion. Airflow is smooth and unhurried, and the depth of each breath is relatively shallow. This pattern conserves energy and supports relaxation. Resting breathing is often regular and rhythmic, especially during sleep. The time spent inhaling and exhaling is balanced, with a slight pause between cycles. These pauses are not interruptions, but moments of equilibrium where pressures briefly equalize. During these moments, the body remains perfectly supplied. There is no urgency, no sense of lack. The system is tuned to meet needs precisely, without excess. As activity increases, the body's demand for oxygen rises. Muscles require more energy, and carbon dioxide is produced more rapidly. Breathing responds not by changing its fundamental principles, but by widening its range. The same muscles and structures are used, but they are recruited more fully. The diaphragm moves farther downward, and the rib cage expands more noticeably. Each breath draws in a larger volume of air. In this more active state, additional muscles begin to assist. The intercostal muscles increase their contribution, lifting the ribs more prominently. Muscles in the neck and upper chest, often referred to as accessory breathing muscles, may also become involved. These muscles help raise the upper ribs and sternum, further increasing chest volume. Their involvement is gradual and proportional, increasing only as needed. Exhalation also changes with effort. While resting exhalation is largely passive, forceful breathing may involve active contraction of abdominal muscles. These muscles press gently upward against the diaphragm, reducing chest volume more quickly and increasing pressure to expel air. This active exhalation clears carbon dioxide more efficiently, preparing the lungs for the next deeper inhale. Despite these changes, breathing with effort remains coordinated. Movements are synchronized, and airflow remains smooth. The system avoids sudden or jerky transitions. Instead, it scales its activity in response to chemical signals from the blood, particularly levels of carbon dioxide and acidity. These signals guide breathing adjustments automatically, without conscious planning. When effort decreases and the body returns toward rest, breathing gradually settles back into its economical pattern. Accessory muscles relax, the diaphragm resumes its smaller range of motion, and exhalation becomes passive once more. This return is as smooth as the increase that preceded it. There is no abrupt switch, only a gentle easing back into calm rhythm. During sleep, breathing remains firmly in the resting category. Even if dreaming introduces brief changes in heart rate or muscle tone, the overall demand remains low. The system favors stability, with the diaphragm leading and other muscles contributing minimally. This allows the body to remain deeply at rest while maintaining essential exchange. It is worth noting that breathing at rest is not shallow in a negative sense. Taking larger breaths than necessary would waste energy and disrupt balance. The nervous system plays a central role in managing these transitions. Centers in the brainstem continuously monitor blood chemistry and adjust breathing accordingly. They increase signals to breathing muscles when demand rises and reduce them when demand falls. This regulation operates continuously, whether awake or asleep, ensuring that breathing remains matched to the body's state. Importantly, these adjustments do not require conscious thought. One does not need to decide to breathe more deeply during activity or more slowly during rest. The system responds automatically, guided by internal conditions rather than external instruction. This autonomy allows attention to remain focused elsewhere or to drift entirely, as it does during sleep. Breathing with effort may feel more noticeable, simply because muscle movement and airflow increase. However, this does not mean the system is strained. Under healthy conditions, breathing remains well within its capacity. The structures involved are designed to handle a wide range of activity, from complete rest to sustained exertion. In contrast, the subtlety of resting breathing often makes it invisible to awareness. During sleep, especially, breathing fades into the background entirely. Yet even in this quiet state, the system remains responsive. If carbon dioxide levels rise slightly, breathing depth may increase subtly. If levels fall, breathing may slow. These changes are gentle and protective. The ability to move seamlessly between rest and effort reflects the adaptability of the respiratory system. It is neither rigid nor chaotic. It follows clear principles while remaining flexible. This balance supports survival comfort, and efficiency across all states of activity. As the night deepens, the body remains in its resting mode. Breathing stays calm and regular, guided by the diaphragm and supported quietly by the chest wall. There is no need for greater effort, and so the system chooses ease. Oxygen delivery remains steady, and carbon dioxide removal remains sufficient. Understanding this contrast between rest and effort can bring reassurance. The body knows how to respond when more is required, and it knows how to conserve when less is needed. There is no need to manage this consciously. The system is self-regulating, reliable, and deeply ingrained. As awareness softens further, breathing continues at its resting pace. Muscles move gently, pressure shifts subtly, and air flows in and out without demand. The capacity for effort remains present, but unused, resting quietly alongside the calm rhythm of the night. In this balance between potential and rest, breathing supports the body's return to deeper sleep, steady and untroubled, one gentle cycle at a time. 14. How blood carries oxygen through the body. As oxygen quietly crosses the thin walls of the alveoli, its journey is only beginning. Entering the blood is not the same as being delivered to the body's tissues. For oxygen to be useful, it must be transported efficiently, protected from loss, and released gently where it is needed. This task is carried out by the blood, and more specifically, by red blood cells and the remarkable molecule they contain, known as hemoglobin. Together, they form a calm and dependable delivery system that works continuously, even as the body rests in sleep. Red blood cells are small, flexible discs that circulate through the bloodstream in vast numbers. Their shape is not accidental. Being thin and slightly indented at the center increases their surface area and allows them to bend easily as they pass through narrow capillaries. Each red blood cell is densely packed with hemoglobin molecules, filling most of its internal space. This specialization makes red blood cells highly efficient carriers of oxygen. Hemoglobin itself is a complex protein containing iron at its core. Each hemoglobin molecule can bind up to 4 oxygen molecules. This binding is not permanent. Oxygen attaches loosely, allowing it to be picked up in the lungs and released later in the tissues. The relationship between oxygen and hemoglobin is stable yet flexible, perfectly suited to transport rather than storage. When blood flows through the capillaries surrounding the alveoli, oxygen diffuses into the red blood cells. This binding keeps the concentration of free oxygen in the blood low, which encourages more oxygen to diffuse in from the alveoli. In this way, hemoglobin supports diffusion by maintaining the gradient that allows oxygen to continue entering the blood. As hemoglobin binds oxygen, it changes shape slightly. This change makes it easier for additional oxygen molecules to bind, creating a smooth and efficient loading process. By the time blood leaves the lungs, hemoglobin is largely saturated with oxygen, meaning it is carrying close to its maximum capacity. This high level of saturation ensures that oxygen delivery remains reliable even if breathing slows slightly during sleep. Once oxygen is bound to hemoglobin, it is carried through the bloodstream as the heart pumps blood to the rest of the body. The circulation distributes oxygen-rich blood to every tissue, from large muscles to delicate neural structures. The speed and rhythm of this circulation adjust gently to the body's needs, but the fundamental process remains steady and predictable. When oxygen-rich blood reaches tissues that are using oxygen for energy production, conditions favor the release of oxygen from hemoglobin. These tissues typically have lower oxygen concentration and higher levels of carbon dioxide and acidity. These factors influence hemoglobin's shape, reducing its affinity for oxygen and encouraging release. Oxygen then diffuses out of the red blood cells, through capillary walls, and into surrounding cells. This release is gradual and controlled. Hemoglobin does not release all its oxygen at once. It provides what is needed locally, preserving the remainder for delivery elsewhere. This selective unloading ensures that oxygen supply remains balanced across different regions of the body. During rest and sleep, oxygen demand is lower, muscles are relaxed, and metabolic activity slows. In this state, hemoglobin releases less oxygen per pass through the tissues. Blood returns to the lungs, still carrying a significant amount of oxygen. This reserve adds stability to the system, allowing for small variations without disruption. The efficiency of hemoglobin also helps explain why breathing can remain shallow during sleep without compromising oxygen delivery. Even with slower airflow, hemoglobin loading in the lungs remains effective. The blood leaves the lungs well supplied, and delivery continues uninterrupted. Hemoglobin's iron-containing structure is essential to its function. The iron atom at the center of each binding site interacts directly with oxygen. This interaction is reversible, allowing oxygen to attach and detach without chemical change. The body carefully regulates iron levels to ensure that hemoglobin production remains sufficient throughout life. Red blood cells themselves have a limited lifespan, typically circulating for several months before being replaced. The body continuously produces new red blood cells in the bone marrow, maintaining a stable population. Old cells are gently removed and recycled, with iron reclaimed for future use. This turnover ensures that oxygen transport remains efficient over time. The movement of red blood cells through capillaries is slow enough to allow gas exchange, but fast enough to support continuous circulation. In the narrowest capillaries, red blood cells may pass in single file, deforming slightly to fit. This flexibility allows them to reach every corner of the body, delivering oxygen even to the smallest tissues. During sleep, circulation remains steady but slightly slower. Heart rate decreases, and blood pressure lowers gently. Despite this, oxygen delivery remains adequate because demand is reduced. Hemoglobin continues its work quietly, releasing and binding oxygen as needed without conscious control. It is also important to recognize that oxygen transport does not occur in isolation. Carbon dioxide produced by tissues enters the blood and influences hemoglobin's behavior. The presence of carbon dioxide encourages oxygen release, creating a coordinated exchange that supports cellular metabolism. This interplay between gases allows the system to respond naturally to changing conditions. The elegance of oxygen transport lies in its balance. Hemoglobin binds oxygen strongly enough to carry it safely. This balance is maintained automatically, guided by local chemical conditions rather than centralized commands. As awareness rests on this process, it becomes clear that breathing and circulation are deeply interconnected. Breathing supplies oxygen to the lungs. Hemoglobin captures it. The heart distributes it. Tissues receive it. All of this occurs continuously, even as consciousness fades into sleep. In the quiet hours of the night, red blood cells continue their circulation. Hemoglobin continues its gentle binding and release. Oxygen moves from air to blood, from blood to tissue, sustaining warmth, repair, and balance. There is no urgency, no effort, only a steady delivery unfolding moment by moment. As this understanding settles, it can bring a sense of reassurance. Oxygen is not rushed or forced. It is carried carefully, protected, and guided by structures designed for endurance and reliability. Even in complete rest, the body remains fully supplied. As sleep deepens, hemoglobin continues its silent work. Blood flows calmly, oxygen is delivered where it is needed, and the body remains supported through every stage of rest. This quiet transport system carries life forward gently, one circulating cell at a time. 15 carbon dioxide transport and the balance of blood chemistry. As oxygen is delivered quietly to the tissues, another equally important process unfolds alongside it. Every cell in the body produces carbon dioxide as a natural result of energy use. This carbon dioxide must be removed efficiently to maintain balance within the internal environment. Breathing serves this purpose not only by bringing oxygen in, but by carrying carbon dioxide away. The transport of carbon dioxide through the blood is calm, precise, and deeply connected to the regulation of blood chemistry. Carbon dioxide leaves the tissues and enters the bloodstream primarily through diffusion. Inside active cells. This difference allows carbon dioxide molecules to drift out of the cells and into nearby capillaries without effort. From there, carbon dioxide must be transported back to the lungs, where it can be released into the air during exhalation. Unlike oxygen, which is carried mostly bound to hemoglobin, carbon dioxide travels in several forms. A small portion remains dissolved directly in the plasma. Another portion binds to hemoglobin, attaching to different sites than oxygen does. However, the largest share of carbon dioxide is transported in a transformed state, converted into bicarbonate ions within red blood cells. This conversion allows large amounts of carbon dioxide to be carried efficiently without greatly altering blood pressure or volume. Inside red blood cells, carbon dioxide reacts with water to form a weak acid called carbonic acid. This reaction is greatly accelerated by an enzyme present within the cells. Carbonic acid then quickly separates into bicarbonate ions and hydrogen ions. The bicarbonate ions move out of the red blood cells into the plasma, while hydrogen ions are buffered by hemoglobin. This buffering prevents excessive changes in blood acidity. This process serves two purposes at once. It allows carbon dioxide to be transported safely in large quantities, and it helps regulate the pH of the blood. pH is a measure of acidity, and even small changes can affect cellular function. The conversion of carbon dioxide into bicarbonate provides a stable way to manage acid levels, maintaining the narrow range required for healthy physiology. As blood carrying bicarbonate ions flows toward the lungs, the process gradually reverses. In the pulmonary capillaries, carbon dioxide concentration in the blood becomes higher than in the alveolar air. Bicarbonate ions move back into red blood cells, where they recombine with hydrogen ions to form carbonic acid. This carbonic acid then breaks down into carbon dioxide and water. The carbon dioxide diffuses into the alveoli and is removed during exhalation. Hemoglobin plays a supporting role throughout this process. When hemoglobin releases oxygen in the tissues, it becomes better able to bind hydrogen ions. This buffering capacity helps stabilize pH as carbon dioxide enters the blood. In the lungs, when hemoglobin binds oxygen again, it releases hydrogen ions, promoting the conversion of bicarbonate back into carbon dioxide. In this way, oxygen transport and carbon dioxide transport are closely linked. During rest and sleep, carbon dioxide production is reduced because metabolic activity is lower. Breathing slows slightly, but carbon dioxide removal remains well matched to production. Blood chemistry stays within a comfortable range, and pH remains stable. The brain is particularly sensitive to changes in carbon dioxide levels. Specialized receptors monitor the concentration of carbon dioxide and the acidity of the blood and surrounding fluid. If carbon dioxide begins to rise, breathing is gently stimulated to increase ventilation. If levels fall, breathing slows. These adjustments are subtle and usually go unnoticed, especially during sleep. Carbon dioxide is therefore not just a waste product, but a key signal in respiratory regulation. Its levels help guide breathing rhythm and depth, ensuring that ventilation remains appropriate to the body's needs. This feedback loop operates continuously, maintaining balance without conscious effort. The buffering systems of the blood extend beyond bicarbonate and hemoglobin. Proteins and other ions also contribute to pH stability, absorbing or releasing hydrogen ions as needed. Together, these buffers create a resilient system that resists sudden changes. Even when breathing patterns shift slightly, blood chemistry remains stable. During deeper stages of sleep, breathing may become very regular, with slight pauses between breaths. Even during these pauses, carbon dioxide levels rise only minimally. The buffering capacity of the blood and the reserve of oxygen carried by hemoglobin provide a margin of safety. breathing resumes smoothly, restoring balance without disturbance. The lungs themselves play a role in regulating acidity by controlling how much carbon dioxide is exhaled. By adjusting ventilation, the body can fine-tune blood pH over short periods. This respiratory control works alongside the kidneys, which regulate acidity over longer timescales. Together, these systems maintain internal stability. It is important to recognize that this regulation is not rigid. The body allows small, temporary fluctuations in carbon dioxide and pH, using them as signals rather than treating them as errors. This flexibility allows the system to adapt smoothly to changes in activity, posture. As awareness rests on this process, it becomes clear that breathing supports balance in more ways than one. It supplies oxygen, removes carbon dioxide, and helps regulate the chemical environment of the blood. These functions are inseparable, woven together through shared mechanisms and feedback loops. In the quiet of the night, carbon dioxide continues to be produced and removed in a steady cycle. Blood carries it calmly from tissues to lungs, transforming and buffering it along the way. Exhalation releases it gently into the air, making room for the next exchange. As sleep deepens, this balance remains intact. Blood chemistry stays within its narrow, healthy range. Breathing continues its quiet rhythm, guided by internal signals rather than awareness. Carbon dioxide transport and pH regulation proceed smoothly, supporting the body's restorative processes. In this calm equilibrium, the body rests securely. Waste is removed, balance is preserved, and breathing continues its essential work without demand or strain. Through each gentle exhale, carbon dioxide leaves the body, carrying with it the quiet assurance that internal harmony is being maintained. Breath by unhurried breath. 16. The brain's quiet rhythm of automatic breathing. As breathing continues through every stage of rest, there is a guiding presence that ensures its rhythm remains steady and responsive. This guidance does not come from conscious thought or deliberate control. Instead, it arises from deep within the brain, in regions that operate quietly and continuously, even when awareness fades completely. These regions generate the rhythm of breathing automatically, adjusting it with care and precision to match the body's needs. At the center of this regulation lies the brainstem, an ancient and reliable structure that connects the brain to the spinal cord. Within the brainstem are networks of neurons dedicated to breathing control. Their activity does not depend on attention, intention, or learning. From the first breath of life onward, they maintain the pattern of inhalation and exhalation without pause. The medulla oblongata, located at the lower portion of the brainstem, plays a central role in this process. It contains groups of neurons that generate the basic rhythm of breathing. These neurons fire in repeating patterns, sending signals down the spinal cord to the diaphragm and other breathing muscles. Each burst of activity corresponds to an inhalation, followed by a quieter phase that allows exhalation to occur. This rhythmic signaling is not rigid or mechanical. It is flexible and adaptive, capable of changing speed and depth as conditions shift. If carbon dioxide levels rise, the medulla increases the frequency or strength of its signals. If levels fall, these adjustments are smooth and proportional, maintaining balance without sudden changes. Just above the medulla lies the pons, another brainstem structure that fine-tunes breathing rhythm. The pons helps shape the transition between inhalation and exhalation, smoothing the pattern and preventing abrupt shifts. It contributes to the gentle flow of breathing, ensuring that each phase blends naturally into the next. This refinement supports comfort and efficiency, particularly during sleep. Together, the medulla and pons form a coordinated control center. The medulla establishes the basic rhythm, while the pons modulates it. This division of labor allows breathing to remain both stable and adaptable. The system can maintain a steady pace for long periods, yet adjust quickly when needed. The signals generated in the brainstem travel through well-defined nerve pathways to reach the breathing muscles. These pathways ensure that instructions arrive reliably and in the correct sequence. The diaphragm receives its signals through the phrenic nerves, while intercostal muscles receive signals through spinal nerves. This coordination allows multiple muscle groups to act together without conscious planning. One of the most remarkable aspects of this system is its independence from awareness. Even when consciousness is fully suspended during deep sleep, the brainstem continues to generate breathing rhythm without interruption. There is no need for reminders or cues. The system is self-sustaining, designed to function under all states of awareness. At the same time, this automatic system remains open to influence from higher brain centers. During waking life, emotions, speech, and voluntary actions can modify breathing temporarily. A sigh, a laugh, or a spoken sentence briefly alters the rhythm. Yet even during these moments, the automatic pattern remains in the background, ready to resume its steady course as soon as voluntary influence fades. During sleep, voluntary influence disappears almost entirely. Breathing becomes fully automatic, guided solely by the brainstem and chemical feedback from the blood. This shift allows breathing to become more regular and economical. The system selects a rhythm that meets metabolic needs with minimal effort, supporting restorative rest. The brainstem's sensitivity to carbon dioxide is particularly important during sleep. Specialized neurons respond to changes in acidity and carbon dioxide concentration, adjusting rhythm to maintain balance. This sensitivity ensures that breathing remains appropriate even without conscious oversight. It is also worth noting that the brainstem receives sensory input from the lungs and airways. Stretch receptors, airflow sensors, and pressure receptors send information back to the control centers. This feedback helps regulate breathing depth and timing, preventing overinflation and supporting smooth transitions between breaths. These signals are processed quietly, rarely reaching awareness. The stability of this system is one reason breathing can be trusted completely during sleep. The brainstem has evolved to prioritize breathing above nearly all other functions, maintaining it even under challenging conditions. This priority reflects the essential nature of respiration to survival. Over the course of a night's sleep, breathing rhythm may change slightly between sleep stages. During lighter sleep, breathing may be a bit less regular. During deeper sleep, it often becomes more rhythmic and slow. Throughout all these changes, the brainstem remains in control, adjusting gently without disruption. The endurance of this system is remarkable. The neurons involved in breathing rhythm generation are active continuously, day and night, for an entire lifetime. They are resistant to fatigue and designed for sustained activity. This endurance ensures that breathing remains reliable over long periods of rest. Understanding this automatic control can bring a sense of reassurance. Breathing does not depend on vigilance or effort. Even when the mind is fully at rest, the brainstem continues its work faithfully. This allows sleep to deepen without concern. As the night progresses and consciousness drifts further away, the medulla and pons continue their quiet dialogue. Signals rise and fall. Muscles respond. Air flows in and out. The rhythm persists, steady and responsive, shaped by internal conditions rather than thought. This automatic rhythm also supports the timing of other physiological processes. Heart rate, blood pressure, and sleep cycles interact gently with breathing rhythm, creating a coordinated internal environment. These interactions remain subtle, supporting stability rather than drawing attention. As awareness softens, it becomes possible to let go completely, trusting this deep regulatory system. Breathing continues without interruption, guided by ancient neural circuits refined through countless generations. In the calm of the night, the brain's quiet rhythm carries breathing forward. Inhale follows exhale in an unbroken sequence, each breath shaped by signals rising from deep within. This steady guidance sustains rest, balance, and renewal. allowing the body to remain safely supported through every stage of sleep, one gentle rhythm at a time. 17 chemoreceptors and the subtle sensing of breath. As the brain's rhythm continues to guide breathing automatically, there is another quiet system constantly informing that rhythm. This system does not move air or contract muscles. Instead, it listens. It senses the chemical state of the blood and surrounding fluids, detecting small changes that signal when breathing should remain steady and when it should gently adjust. These listeners are known as chemoreceptors, and they form a calm, attentive network that supports balance without ever demanding awareness. Chemoreceptors are specialized cells designed to respond to the chemical composition of the body's internal environment. Their primary focus is on levels of carbon dioxide, oxygen, and acidity. Among these signals, carbon dioxide is the most influential. Even small changes in carbon dioxide levels can alter the acidity of the blood and the fluid surrounding the brain, making it a reliable indicator of how well breathing is meeting the body's needs. There are two main groups of chemoreceptors involved in breathing regulation. One group lies centrally within the brainstem itself. These central chemoreceptors are positioned close to the fluid that surrounds the brain and spinal cord. Because this fluid reflects changes in blood chemistry, these receptors are well placed to detect shifts in acidity caused by carbon dioxide levels. When carbon dioxide in the blood rises, it leads to a slight increase in acidity in this surrounding fluid. Central chemoreceptors detect this change and respond by increasing their signaling to the breathing centers in the brainstem. The result is a gentle increase in breathing depth or rate, allowing more carbon dioxide to be exhaled. When carbon dioxide levels fall, the opposite occurs, and breathing slows slightly. This feedback loop operates continuously, maintaining balance with quiet precision. The second group of chemoreceptors is located peripherally, outside the brain. These peripheral chemoreceptors are found primarily in the carotid bodies near the neck and the aortic bodies near the heart. They monitor the blood directly as it flows past, responding to changes in oxygen, carbon dioxide, and acidity. Peripheral chemoreceptors are especially sensitive to oxygen levels. When oxygen levels drop below a certain threshold, these receptors increase their signaling to the brainstem, encouraging deeper or faster breathing. Under normal resting conditions, oxygen levels remain well within a comfortable range, and peripheral chemoreceptors remain relatively quiet. Their activity increases only when needed, such as at high altitude or during certain physiological challenges. During sleep, the role of chemoreceptors becomes especially important. Conscious awareness no longer contributes to breathing regulation. Instead, chemical feedback takes the lead. Central chemoreceptors, in particular, guide breathing rhythm by responding to subtle changes in carbon dioxide. This ensures that ventilation remains matched to metabolic demand even as the body rests deeply. The sensitivity of chemoreceptors is finely tuned. They do not respond to every small fluctuation, only to changes that matter. This prevents overcorrection and helps maintain smooth, stable breathing. The adjustments they trigger are gradual, allowing the system to remain calm rather than reactive. Chemoreceptor signaling travels quickly and reliably to the brainstem. Once received, this information is integrated with signals from other sources, such as lung stretch receptors and airway sensors. The breathing centers weigh all of this input together, producing a coordinated response that feels effortless and automatic. One of the remarkable features of chemoreceptor control is its adaptability over time. If carbon dioxide levels remain slightly elevated for extended periods, chemoreceptors can adjust their sensitivity. This prevents constant overactivation and allows the system to settle into a new equilibrium if needed. This adaptability supports long-term stability. During the night, breathing patterns may shift subtly between sleep stages. Chemoreceptors remain active throughout these changes, maintaining appropriate ventilation. If breathing slows too much and carbon dioxide rises, chemoreceptors respond gently, increasing breathing just enough to restore balance. This occurs without waking the sleeper or creating any sensation. The presence of chemoreceptors also explains why breathing continues reliably even in unfamiliar conditions. Whether lying flat, curled on the side, or resting in a new environment, chemical feedback remains constant. The internal environment guides breathing more strongly than external circumstances, providing consistency across situations. Chemoreceptors do not work alone. They are part of a layered regulatory system that includes mechanical feedback, neural rhythm generation, and muscle responsiveness. Each layer supports the others. If one signal changes, the system adapts smoothly rather than abruptly. This redundancy ensures reliability. The calm efficiency of chemoreceptor control is often overlooked because it rarely enters awareness. There is no sensation associated with their activity under normal conditions. Their influence is felt only indirectly, through the maintenance of comfortable breathing. As awareness softens during sleep, the role of chemoreceptors becomes even more central. They quietly monitor the internal environment, ensuring that oxygen remains sufficient and carbon dioxide does not accumulate. Their vigilance allows consciousness to withdraw completely without compromising safety. It is also worth noting that emotional states and conscious control can temporarily override chemoreceptor signals. Holding the breath or altering breathing voluntarily can suppress their influence for short periods. However, chemoreceptor signaling gradually asserts itself, restoring automatic breathing when voluntary control fades. During sleep, this override disappears entirely. The endurance of chemoreceptors matches that of the breathing centers they inform. They operate continuously, day and night, responding to internal chemistry without fatigue. This endurance supports the long-term reliability of breathing regulation. As this understanding settles, breathing can be seen not just as a mechanical process, but as a sensory one as well. The body listens to itself constantly, adjusting based on what it hears. Chemoreceptors are the quiet listeners, attentive and responsive, shaping breathing without intrusion. In the stillness of the night, carbon dioxide levels rise and fall gently with each breath. Oxygen levels remain steady. Chemoreceptors detect these changes and relay them softly to the brainstem. Signals adjust, muscles respond, and air flows accordingly. There is no urgency in this process, only steady attention. The system does not wait for problems to arise. It responds early and gently, keeping the internal environment within comfortable bounds. This quiet vigilance supports deep, uninterrupted rest. As sleep deepens further, chemoreceptors continue their subtle monitoring. Breathing remains calm and sufficient, guided by chemical balance rather than thought. In this silent partnership between sensing and response, the body remains supported, balanced, and at ease. One gentle breath following the next, without interruption. 18. Protective reflexes and the care of the airways. As breathing continues in its calm, automatic rhythm, there is a parallel system always standing quietly on guard. This system does not interrupt rest unless it must, and most of the time it works so smoothly that it goes unnoticed. Its purpose is simple and essential: to protect the airways and lungs from anything that might interfere with the delicate processes taking place within them. Through reflexes, gentle cleaning mechanisms, and coordinated movements, the respiratory system maintains clarity and safety without disrupting the ease of breathing. The airways are open to the outside world, and with each breath, they encounter particles, moisture, and microscopic organisms. Most of these never reach the lungs. They are intercepted early, guided away, or removed quietly before they can cause harm. One of the most familiar protective reflexes is the cough. Although coughing can feel forceful when it occurs, its role is precise and purposeful. When receptors in the airways detect irritation, excess mucus, or foreign material, they send signals to the brainstem. In response, a coordinated sequence unfolds. The lungs take a deep breath, the vocal cords briefly close, pressure builds in the chest, and then the cords open suddenly. Air rushes outward, carrying unwanted material with it. This sequence is rapid and effective, yet it remains dormant most of the time. During rest and sleep, coughing is rare because the airways are generally clear. The reflex remains available but inactive, conserving energy and preserving calm. Only when needed does it engage, performing its task and then returning to silence. Another protective reflex is the sneeze, which serves a similar purpose in the upper airways. When irritants stimulate receptors in the nasal passages, a forceful expulsion of air helps clear them. Like coughing, sneezing is coordinated automatically and remains absent during sleep unless stimulation is strong enough to require it. Swallowing is also closely coordinated with breathing to protect the airway. The throat serves as a shared passageway for air and food, and precise timing ensures that these two functions do not interfere with one another. During swallowing, breathing pauses briefly, and structures in the throat redirect food away from the airway. This coordination occurs reflexively, even during sleep, maintaining separation between the respiratory and digestive systems. Beyond these reflexes, the airways employ a constant, gentle cleaning mechanism, often described as a moving carpet. The lining of the trachea and bronchi is covered with cilia, tiny hair-like structures that beat rhythmically in one direction. These cilia move mucus upward toward the throat at a slow, steady pace. Trapped within the mucus are dust particles and microorganisms that never make it to the alveoli. This process operates continuously and quietly. It does not rely on coughing or conscious action. During sleep, when movement and swallowing slow, the cilia continue their work at the same unhurried pace. Over time, material collected in the mucus is swallowed and neutralized by the digestive system, completing the protective cycle. Mucus itself plays a crucial role in airway care. Produced by specialized cells lining the airways, it forms a thin, sticky layer that traps particles before they can reach sensitive lung tissue. The amount and consistency of mucus are carefully regulated. Too little would reduce protection, while too much could obstruct airflow. Under healthy conditions, this balance is maintained without awareness. Deeper in the lungs, within the alveoli, protection takes a quieter form. Specialized immune cells patrol these air spaces, identifying and removing any particles that manage to reach them. These cells work discreetly, avoiding inflammation unless truly necessary. Their presence ensures that the alveoli remain clear and functional without provoking sensation or discomfort. The nervous system integrates all of these protective mechanisms seamlessly with breathing. Reflexes are coordinated so that they occur at appropriate moments, minimizing disruption. For example, a cough is timed with a deep inhalation and forceful exhalation, using existing breathing mechanics rather than fighting them. This integration preserves efficiency even during protective responses. During sleep, the threshold for activating reflexes is slightly higher. This means that mild stimuli are less likely to trigger coughing or sneezing, allowing rest to continue uninterrupted. Stronger stimuli still activate protection, ensuring safety without unnecessary disturbance. This balance reflects the body's priority to preserve both rest and airway integrity. It is also worth noting that posture during sleep influences airway protection. Lying on the side or with the head slightly elevated can support natural drainage of mucus and reduce the likelihood of irritation. The body often shifts positions naturally during sleep, redistributing airflow and supporting airway care without conscious choice. Protective reflexes are also shaped by learning and experience. Over time, the nervous system becomes more efficient at distinguishing between harmless stimuli and those that require action. This refinement helps prevent overreaction, keeping reflexes reserved for situations that truly warrant them. Despite their importance, These protective systems are rarely noticed when functioning well. Their success is measured by the absence of obstruction, infection, or discomfort. Breathing remains smooth, quiet, and uninterrupted, allowing attention to remain at rest. As awareness softens during the night, these protective mechanisms continue their watch. Cilia move steadily, immune cells patrol quietly, and reflex pathways remain ready without being active. The airways stay open and clear, supporting the gentle rhythm of breathing. This constant care allows the lungs to focus on their primary task of gas exchange. By removing threats and maintaining cleanliness, protective systems create an environment where diffusion and transport can proceed efficiently. As the night deepens further, the airways remain well tended. Protection is present without tension. In this calm balance, breathing continues its quiet work. The lungs are safeguarded by reflexes that sleep until needed and by cleaning processes that never stop. Together, they ensure that rest is uninterrupted and that the delicate structures of the respiratory system remain cared for. Breath after gentle breath throughout the long, quiet hours of the night. 19. Breathing efficiency and the quiet idea of dead space. As breathing continues its steady rhythm, moving air in and out with calm reliability, it may seem that every part of each breath is used equally. In reality, the respiratory system is subtly layered, and not all inhaled air reaches the alveoli where gas exchange occurs. Some of it remains in the conducting airways, serving an important but indirect role. This portion is known as dead space, and understanding it adds a final. Dead space does not mean wasted or useless air. Rather, it refers to the volume of air that fills the airways where gas exchange does not occur. This includes the nose, mouth, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, and bronchioles that lead air toward the alveoli. These passages are essential for guiding, filtering, warming, and humidifying air, even though they do not participate directly in oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange. When you inhale, fresh air enters the conducting airways first. Before it can reach the alveoli, it must pass through this entire network of tubes and branches. The air that occupies these spaces at the end of inhalation is still fresh, but it has not yet reached the exchange surfaces. During the next exhalation, this air is the first to leave the body, exiting before the air from the alveoli does. Because of this, each breath contains a mixture of air. Part of it comes from the alveoli, rich in carbon dioxide and lower in oxygen, and part of it comes from the dead space, still similar to outside air. This mixing is normal and expected. The body accounts for it naturally when regulating breathing depth and rate. The size of the anatomical dead space is relatively constant in a given individual. It is determined by the dimensions of the airways and does not change significantly from breath to breath. In adults, it represents a modest portion of the total breath volume. The respiratory system is designed with this in mind, ensuring that even with dead space present, enough fresh air reaches the alveoli to support efficient gas exchange. Breathing efficiency depends not on eliminating dead space, but on balancing breath size and rhythm. During very shallow breathing, a larger proportion of each breath remains in the dead space, and less fresh air reaches the alveoli. During deeper breathing, the dead space volume stays the same, but the total breath volume increases, allowing more air to reach the exchange surfaces. This is one reason breathing naturally becomes deeper during activity. During rest and sleep, breathing is shallower, but metabolic demand is also lower. The body adjusts its expectations accordingly. Even though a greater proportion of each breath may remain in the dead space, the overall exchange remains sufficient because oxygen needs are reduced. The system remains efficient because it matches supply to demand rather than maximizing airflow at all times. Dead space also plays a protective role. By occupying the airways, it ensures that alveoli are not exposed directly to sudden changes in temperature or humidity. The airways condition incoming air gradually, protecting delicate alveolar surfaces. This buffering function supports long-term lung health and comfort. There is also a functional dead space, a concept that includes not only the conducting airways but also any alveoli that are ventilated but not well supplied with blood. Under healthy resting conditions, this functional dead space closely matches the anatomical dead space. Blood flow and airflow are well matched, and gas exchange is efficient throughout the lungs. The body continuously monitors and adjusts for dead space through chemoreceptor feedback. If carbon dioxide removal becomes less efficient, breathing depth or rate increases slightly, compensating without awareness. These adjustments are smooth and proportional, ensuring that dead space does not compromise balance. During sleep, these mechanisms continue quietly. Breathing may slow, and brief pauses may occur between breaths, especially in deeper sleep stages. Even during these pauses, dead space does not create a problem. The buffering capacity of the blood and the reserve of oxygen carried by hemoglobin provide stability. Breathing resumes gently, restoring alveolar ventilation as needed. It is also worth noting that posture influences how air is distributed within the lungs, but dead space itself remains relatively unchanged. Whether lying on the back or side, the conducting airways still occupy the same volume. The lungs adapt by redistributing airflow and blood flow, maintaining efficient exchange despite shifts in gravity. The presence of dead space highlights an important principle of respiratory design. The system is not optimized for maximum efficiency at every moment, but for reliability, protection, and adaptability. Accepting a small amount of non-exchanging air allows the airways to perform their conditioning and protective roles without compromising overall function. This design supports comfort. Breathing does not need to be deep or forceful at rest. The body is free to choose the most economical pattern, conserving energy and supporting relaxation. Dead space is simply part of the landscape through which air travels, not an obstacle to be overcome. As awareness rests on this idea, breathing can be understood as a layered process. Air moves through spaces that prepare it, then into spaces that exchange gases, and then back out again. Each layer has its role, and none is extraneous. Together, they form a system that values balance over intensity. During the quiet hours of the night, this balance is especially evident. Breathing is slow and steady. Dead space fills and empties with each breath, performing its silent functions. Alveoli receive just enough fresh air to maintain exchange. The blood carries oxygen and carbon dioxide away with calm regularity. There is no sense of inefficiency in this process. What might appear, in theory, as unused air is in practice an integral part of respiratory design. It allows breathing to remain gentle, flexible, and protective, especially during rest. As sleep deepens further, breathing continues without awareness. The body does not measure or judge each breath. It responds only to internal balance. Dead space remains constant, alveolar ventilation remains sufficient, and the system stays in harmony. In this way, breathing efficiency is not about using every molecule of air, but about maintaining equilibrium with ease. The respiratory system achieves this through thoughtful structure and responsive control. Dead space is simply one of the quiet features that make this possible. As the night continues, each breath follows its familiar path, filling the airways, reaching the alveoli, and flowing back out again. The system remains calm, complete, and dependable, carrying the body gently through rest, one balanced breath at a time. 20. Nighttime closure, and the breath as a steady companion. As this long, gentle exploration draws toward its close, attention can return to where it all began, not at the level of structures or mechanisms, but at the simple presence of the breath itself. After moving slowly through airways and alveoli, muscles and membranes, chemistry and neural rhythm, it becomes clear that breathing is not a single action, but a quiet collaboration. Each part plays its role, without demand, without awareness, and without pause. Now, in the stillness of night, all of these elements continue together as one calm, continuous process. Breathing does not need to be guided or improved in order to function well. It has been shaped by structure, physics, chemistry, and time to operate reliably under every condition of rest. The lungs rest softly within the chest, expanding and releasing in response to gentle changes in space and pressure. The diaphragm continues its slow descent and return, creating room without effort. The rib cage follows, widening and settling in a rhythm that feels almost wave-like when observed closely, and invisible when it is not. Air moves through passages that remain open and cared for. It is filtered, warmed, and guided inward, then released again just as calmly. Deep within the lungs, millions of alveoli remain gently open, supported by surfactant and balance, receiving air and passing oxygen into the blood without sound or sensation. Carbon dioxide leaves just as quietly, carried away and released with each exhale. Blood flows steadily, carrying oxygen bound to hemoglobin and returning with carbon dioxide buffered and transformed. Chemistry remains balanced, acidity held within narrow, comfortable limits. The heart and lungs work together without competition, their rhythms adjusting subtly to one another, especially during sleep, when everything slows just enough to conserve energy while maintaining stability. Above all of this, the brainstem continues its quiet leadership. Without instruction or awareness, it sends signals that shape each breath, guided by feedback from chemoreceptors and stretch sensors. These signals rise and fall with gentle consistency, ensuring that breathing remains matched to the body's needs, even as consciousness drifts far away. Protective systems remain in place without intrusion. Airways are kept clear by slow, steady movement of mucus and cilia. Reflexes remain ready but silent, intervening only if truly necessary. The lungs are watched over without tension, allowing rest to remain undisturbed. Even the idea of efficiency, explored through dead space and airflow distribution, settles into a larger understanding. Breathing is not about perfection or maximum use, but about balance. Air moves through spaces that prepare it before exchange, and this preparation is part of what allows breathing to be gentle, flexible, and protective. Nothing is rushed, and nothing is wasted. As the night deepens, the breath becomes less something to think about and more something to rest alongside. It continues, whether it is noticed or not. It adapts to posture, to sleep stages, to subtle changes in the body, always returning to equilibrium. There is a quiet reassurance in this constancy. Throughout this guide, details have unfolded slowly, not to demand attention, but to offer understanding that can drift gently into the background. Knowledge does not need to stay sharp or active to be useful here. It can soften, becoming a kind of ambient awareness, much like the breath itself. In sleep, the body does not review its own processes. It simply allows them to continue. The lungs do not check their structure, and the brain does not rehearse its signals. Everything proceeds according to patterns that have been repeated countless times before. This repetition is not monotonous, but stabilizing. It creates predictability, and predictability supports rest. As awareness fades further, breathing becomes a steady companion rather than a subject. Inhale follows exhale. Pressure rises and falls. Oxygen enters. Carbon dioxide leaves. The rhythm carries on without commentary, without evaluation. There is no need to listen closely or to follow along. The system does not require supervision. Even moments of slight variation, a deeper breath, a longer pause, fit easily into the larger pattern. The body adjusts and returns to balance naturally. Nothing needs to be corrected. Nothing has gone wrong. The quiet strength of this system lies in its humility. It does not announce itself when working well. It supports every other process by remaining in the background. During the night, as muscles relax and thoughts dissolve, breathing becomes one of the few steady threads connecting one moment to the next. As this final part settles, it is enough to know that the breath will continue long after attention has drifted away. It will be there through light, sleep, and deep sleep, through dreams and stillness. It will maintain balance while the body repairs and restores itself. There is nothing to remember from this moment forward. The details can fade. The explanations can dissolve. What remains is the steady presence of breathing itself, quiet, reliable, and complete. The lungs rest. The chest moves softly. Air comes and goes. Chemistry stays balanced. Signals rise and fall in the dark. All of it continues without effort, without urgency, and without interruption. In this calm closure, the breath does not end, and the process does not stop. It simply carries on, as it always has. With each unhurried cycle, rest deepens, balance is maintained, and the quiet work of breathing continues. Steady and faithful through every remaining hour of sleep.